Yes, good afternoon, everyone. You are welcome to this session, and I would like to sincerely thank you for your patience. Our session for today is on social media and conflict, where the trainer will take us through very important aspects that are related to this training topic. I trust that we will be able to cover as much as possible within these remaining hours. And over to you, Joki Karaoke. Over to you. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly.
Hi, Vida. Yes, you have. Have you actually been in Kenya? Because you pronounced it perfectly.
No, I haven't been to Kenya.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. I am really sorry because of the technical difficulties we had. So now I think we will have to sort of compress everything we were to discuss today into the remaining hour, but we'll make sure we go through everything. So again, I'd like to thank you for being here. My name is Joki Karaoke. I am actually just filling in for my colleague Kendi Gikunda, who was supposed to be your trainer, but could not be here because of other commitments. So I hope, seeing it's my first time, I'll actually do a good job. And you will again have to forgive me. I have a bit of a cold, so if my voice goes a bit, don't worry about it. So today what we're going to talk about is social media and conflict. But before we do, I'd like to sort of put down some ground rules. In as much as we do not have that much time to discuss today's topic, I would also like it to be a bit interactive. So if anybody wants to say something, if you have some sort of comment or a question, just either put up your hand, just show me your hand on the screen and I will see, or you can type your question or your comment into the chat box and I will make sure to incorporate it or to ask your question so that we can go along together. I will also like to ask you some few questions because I don't want to be the only one talking. I'm not here to just talk. We are here to discuss. So hopefully when I ask questions, I will find people to discuss this with me. So anyway, on to our topic for today. We're talking about social media and conflict. Just a bit, let me just share my screen so that you can all see the presentation I have. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about social media and conflict, and I am going to base my discussion today using what we call the social media hate speech mitigation field guide. This is just sort of a guide on hate speech mitigation and peace building. What I'm going to use is the second edition of the field guide that we did for Cameroon. We did the first one, then we did the second edition, having incorporated feedback from the community, the trainers who are using it. And so we sort of refined it more to what people find relevant. The first field guide we actually did was for South Sudan. So that was like the very, very first edition. So we have the first and second editions of Cameroon, but we also have another one for Ethiopia. But for the purposes of this class today, I'll be using the second edition of the Cameroon hate speech field guide. And it does not just come, when I say the field guide is the booklet that sort of gives instructions, but it comes as an entire resource package that comes with the field guide. It comes with discussion cards. So discussion cards just have sort of topics and questions that spur on discussions. So when you're going out to multiply, like the training you're having today, you go out to the community and you need to explain to people, or you're running a training. So you have those discussion cards that just prompt you to discuss several very important aspects and sort of ask questions, the questions you'd like to ask people so that they can spur on discussions. We have the posters that you can hang on, and when people are maybe just coming in or having a tea break, they can look at it. It covers all the topics that are on the field guide and also can serve as a conversation starter. We have games, because we notice sometimes, discussing this, like, for example, the way I'm discussing it with you, it looks a bit serious, and when it comes to discussing serious topics, sometimes it is also better to sort of use light moments for, I don't know, I could say better understanding. So we have a snakes and ladders game. It's a peace game, but instead of now snakes and ladders, it's sort of like rewards and consequences. So if you do something like, for example, the way you're learning about fact checking. So if you actually fact check, you move forward. But if you do something like sharing misinformation or sharing hate speech, then it moves you down. It just sort of makes you learn along the way as you're heading. I think the end game is a hate-free community. So as you're going towards there, you sort of see what is positive and what is negative. And the rest are just to help you out, the note and the USB key. So in this field guide, it discusses several topics. Yeah, it's divided into 6 chapters that each cover a specific aspect of the conflict and peace building process. So it acts like sort of a base of action on media-induced hate speech, because what we look at mostly is hate speech that is propagated on media channels, mostly on social media, but also on traditional sort of media. And so what we're trying to do is, number one, we raise awareness, but we also raise awareness in terms of tackling conflicts, in terms of supporting media literacy, because there are people who do not know how to use the kind of maybe media, the mediums that you use. So we teach them how to sort of have a social media code of conduct, how to behave online, social media literacy, and also address issues of conflict, migration, displacement, but that is another topic. So the 6 chapters we have are social media and conflict, which we will be discussing today. Social media use and fact checking. I'm sure you've gone through some of this, but we will also cover a bit of that. Peace building through art and technology. We will also cover a bit of that today. Identity, mental health, trauma and healing, and common hate speech. I think this we will cover during next week's session. So what we're going to concentrate on today is social media and conflict, and peace building through art, like it says here, and peace building through art and technology. Okay. So when it comes to social media and conflict, I think the question might be asked why we are concentrating specifically on social media. And the thing is, in recent times, I will say social media has sort of overtaken the traditional media in terms of disseminating information, especially how instantaneous and fast it can spread. Because you see, traditional media, maybe you write something on a newspaper, you have to physically be reading the paper, and it has some geographical constraints. But when it comes to social media, when you write your post on Facebook, you're just seated there in your house, in your office, under a tree, whatever. Just write a post on Facebook, post it, and immediately it can go to millions of people. And it does not have the sort of checks and balances that we had on traditional media. Like, for example, on TV, on radio, on the newspaper, it had to pass through people, it had to pass through editors, it had to pass through maybe legal people in the department. But on social media, we have the freedom, I would say, to post just anything. And so for that reason, it has been used, well, it's used different ways, because social media can bring people together. It has been used as a tool for peace building. It has been used as a tool to sort of organize people into a movement. I don't know if you remember the Arab Spring. You know what happened in Tunisia and Egypt, where they used social media. They used Facebook, they used Twitter, they used WhatsApp to sort of spur people into action, to sort of arrange the protests against the government. And so in that way, it can be a very positive thing. But then on the flip side, the people who propagate hate speech can also see the power of social media. And so they use that to sort of radicalize people, to just pass along hate messages. And it has been such a big thing in the recent past that all the social media platforms, looking at Facebook, looking at Twitter, looking at YouTube, Instagram, all of them had sort of tried to clamp down on the hate speech that is going on online. So it is a big problem. And that's why we concentrate on it, because it's a really, really big facet of the conflict that we are witnessing today. I don't think there's any recent conflict that we can say has been untouched by social media, even if it's just, the communication that people do when you're sharing messages on WhatsApp, when you're reposting and posting something that somebody has written on social media. So it is a very important part. So when you're going through fact checking, when you're doing peace building, then social media should be a very important component of what you're looking at. And when we talk about social media and conflict, the conflict that happens on social media is mostly either posts that are done, words that are said. So even if it's violence, we call it verbal violence, because on social media itself, hate speech takes on those terms. So hate speech, as we have described here, it's a communication that attacks people, describes them as less valuable, and they do not deserve to participate fully in society. And hate speech can be spoken. So that means it can either be an audio or a video. Somebody films themselves talking something derogatory about another group or another community, or it can be written down. So that is in terms of posts, in terms of tweets, or it can be sort of imagery. Yeah, so somebody can bring out either a meme or just a picture, or maybe, for example, a picture of a Black person who looks like a monkey. That is still hate speech. It's still very derogatory. They have not said anything. They have not written anything. They just put it sort of like in picture form, in illustration form, but it's still considered hate speech. And so we said hate speech makes verbal attacks because the target is a member of a particular group or a particular community. So hate speech mostly relies on you see another group or somebody who is part of another group of another community as somebody who is less than, somebody who sort of, I can say, brings down the purity of your group. It can be tribal. As in Africa, a lot of it is based on tribe. I know it is the same way in South Sudan. I'm from Kenya. So in Kenya, we have this tribalism. And so online, when you're describing somebody else from another tribe, it's sort of, you come at it with a negative connotation about those people. It becomes, whatever that person does becomes sort of an identity on their community. And so when you attack them, you attack sort of the community in a whole. So that is what we're trying to fight. So like I said, what I'm basing this on is called the Social Media Hate Speech Mitigation Field Guide. So we try and mitigate this hate speech, because left alone, hate speech can develop into something more, right? What we're calling dangerous speech. And by the way, again, like I said, I don't know if I'm talking too fast, but if somebody has any question, I can't see the chat now that I'm sharing, but maybe just unmute and interrupt me so that I can listen to your question, because I'm not able to see the chats, or I'm not able to see all of you on my screen. So hate speech when it is not, when we do not take care of it, when we do not mitigate it, then it has the danger of turning into something we call dangerous speech. And there's a difference between hate speech and dangerous speech. Hate speech is just sort of expressing some very negative opinions on another, or a member, or just the entire group. And it involves, you can say something negative, it can be insults, but then dangerous speech comes with something different. It is hate speech combined with a call to action. It is an expression that increases the risk that people will commit or condone violence. And so at that point that it is hate speech is where we need to take care of it before it turns into dangerous speech. And how do we know it is turning into dangerous speech? So the first thing we need to look at is dehumanization. When we talk about members of that other group, that other community, are we taking away their humanity? Are we talking about them in terms that sort of denies or diminishes the whole entire human persona? You start referring to them in words that maybe names of animals, of insects, of inanimate objects. Like, for example, in Rwanda, how the Hutu started referring to the Tutsi as cockroaches. You dehumanize people. So in this way, if you attack them, it's not like you're attacking fellow human beings. That whole entire group just becomes sort of vermin, something that you need sort of to exterminate. And so when you see it going towards that way, then that is moving towards dangerous speech. The second thing you should look out for is the assertion that whoever either that member of that group or that group in general is compromising either your security, you feel unsafe, and mostly what is used in this assertions, they like to use women and children. They will say, these members of this group are a danger to us, they're a danger to our women, they're a danger. So it looks like the members of that group itself is threatening the more vulnerable people in society. And so this will spur on some people to feel protective, to feel like the people who are being targeted by this hate speech are sort of the aggressors, because if you do not do something about it, then the people who are vulnerable in our society are going to be affected, they're going to be attacked. And it moves that way. When, for example, the US, Black men were a target for this from the 1960s upwards. And they used to use white women a lot, saying, white women are at danger of being, attacked and sexually assaulted by Black men. And so the white men, others, would feel like it is their duty to sort of offer this protection. And so they would attack them unprovoked. It is this sort of speeches that sort of spur people into action. It's a threat, I would say, to the purity of the group. And so dangerous speech is any communication that calls for people to take action in violence. It is hate speech, and it is combined with a call to action. So hate speech is just talking about the community, the whatever group that the abuse is being held at, but then the call to action turns into dangerous speech. So now we are moving away from just speaking, from it being just words, from it being just images, from it being just illustrations, to actually these people being in danger of physically being attacked. And that is dangerous speech. It is easiest to identify dangerous speech that just comes before violence. So it's very clear, and it calls for and directly endorses violence. So let's talk about dangerous speech the last point here, it's calls to violence. They're not as obvious because they're most likely to come from a high-profile speaker. And this issue of dangerous speech coming from high-profile speakers, let's first describe these high-profile speakers and who they are. So these speakers that we term as influential. The question is, why do we consider them influential? I think I'll throw this question to the audience. Who would you consider influential as a speaker?
A person who is most followed by people.
So what you're saying is somebody who has a large audience.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, somebody else, who would you consider influential? I'm sorry, I can't see all of you so that I can call out names, but just, I think help me out here. I cannot call out names, but I would really like to know who you think is influential in terms of speakers.
Somebody who is polite.
Somebody who is polite. Okay. Somebody else?
I think, again, I'm coming up again.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're saying?
I'm saying it is a person who can mostly be followed by a lot of people. Whenever he or she says something, those people will do whatever thing he or she says.
Yes.
A leader in society. Yeah.
A leader. Somebody else?
I think it cuts across religious leaders, political leaders, opinion leaders in the community, just like what happened in the Rwanda genocide. Even priests were involved in dangerous and hate speech.
I fully agree. So what we're talking about when we say somebody is influential, the first thing we look at is that speaker themselves, in terms of their social status, they're either political office, or not just an office, whether it be political or not. So it can either be a religious office, it can be a political office, it can be a corporate office, anyone who is a leader, because people tend to listen to these people. They did not get to the top by just being like anybody else. They get to the top because they have that thing that people sort of listen to. So your social status, you can either be, people just listen to others also because they have, they're rich. People listen to rich people a lot. Right now, if Elon Musk says something, people will listen to them. He's very influential in that way. Political office, people will listen to political leaders, be it president, be it a member of parliament, a senator, a governor. People will listen to their political leaders. And then there's something very important somebody said. Just somebody who is polite, but I think what we're going for, somebody who is followed by a lot of people and people listen to what they say. So this is what we call charisma. There are people who just hang on to their every word. So if they say something, people are more likely to follow them. They have an audience that is willing to listen because they have that sort of charisma. So that's the first one on the speaker. The second one is the audience themselves. Who is this message targeting? And why are they sympathetic to this message? As we have had, somebody said political leaders, religious leaders in the case of Rwanda. Why are these people receptive to this message from these people? One can be the social norms of obedience. We, as a society, we sort of respect the strata of society. And so we listen to our leadership. Social norms of obedience sort of dictate to us to listen to those who are in power. And it is especially so in religious circles. So your priest, your pastor, your reverend, your imam, these are people that you listen to. These are people who have power over their congregation. And if that person who is that influential says something, then people are willing to listen to it, whether it is a good thing whether it's a bad thing. I'm sure if I asked you right now, you can come up with examples of either something a political leader said, a religious leader said, an opinion leader said, our influential, social media influencers, the bloggers, celebrities, people say something and people take it to heart because these people are influential. They have something that makes people listen to them. And so if this person, this influential person, propagates hate speech, it is going to have a bigger effect than if either you or I say it. If somebody who does not have that big of a following says it, it's going to have a different effect. So we have to counter hate speech by influential people a bit different from how we counter it with people just, on the internet, just passing along messages. And this is what we're talking about, countering high-profile speakers. The first thing you can do as an audience, as people, we are called netizens, the citizens of the internet. You can put pressure to retract statements. I'm going to give you an example. I'm Kenyan, obviously, I'm going to give you a Kenyan example. But there's this former member of parliament in Kenya who went to see his constituents, and they told him they're having a lot of problem with the power providers, they call the Kenya Power. And their workers were coming to disconnect their power. I mean, it had been connected illegally, but so when the MP went to visit and people told him, oh, you're having a lot of problems from Kenya Power. In front of cameras, he told them, when you see those people, just put a tire on them. And in Kenya, what happens is whenever you find, it used to be very, very popular back in the day. I don't think it happens that much now. But what people used to do was put a tire over a thief and light them on fire and basically burn them to death. And so this MP suggested that, say, if you see those people, the workers from the power company, put a tire on them. But then when people pressured him, there was a lot of pressure on that statement. A lot of people were not happy about it. And he retracted. He said, when I said put a tire on them, what I meant was put tire on their car so that their car can drive safer. And those kind of pressure for leaders, for high-profile speakers to retract statements as something that we can do as citizens. You can organize. If you are a thought leader, if you have a bit of influence on your community, you can use pressure. You and the community or people online, you can use pressure to help them, to make sure that they retract their statement. And so in that way, the retracted statement or a statement apologizing might actually reach lesser people than what the original statement, how many people the original statement reached, but at least it will be something. So I don't know, I hope somebody can give me an example from South Sudan of either a leader, political leader, religious leader, any sort of leader, whether it be a celebrity, a blogger, who has been compelled to retract their statement based on pressure from the public. Is there any such example? Anyone?
Yes, there is one example of a celebrity called Silver X and John Frog. Yeah, Silver X posted a statement about John Frog's nomination in AFRMA Award, and he was later compelled to apologize by the people. It later turned out to be so he apologized on the Facebook. I think that's an example.
That's a very good example. So we can somebody
I also have example to say.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, our former Minister of Finance. He said something recently that the oil was sold up to 2027.
Okay.
So that thing took attention for all people from South Sudan. Were described. I mean, we're talking about government, why the government sell the oil in advance. So after some time, he went back to the media, and he said it was taken out of context.
Yes, they always say that.
So he said what he meant was that the oil was not sold in advance, but he mean the oil, which is still down, would last up to the 2027. So I think we will fit that as one of the examples.
Yes, those are very good examples. So what happens when they make these utterances is most of them do not believe there will be consequences. But then when people actually see that and put pressure on them, there's consequences. So number one, they will retract their statement. They will try and explain it away, of course, because even they know that what they said was not very positive. But also, the next time they go somewhere, they will actually reconsider before making some statements, which is a good thing about pressure. So we cannot sit here and say, an influential person said this, so we cannot do anything. We can actually do something about it and counter the high-profile speakers. So that is to the public. The public can actually pressure high-profile speakers to retract statements, to offer apologies, to backtrack on their earlier statements. But we can also ask other high-profile persons to make statements on hate speech. So if somebody with such a big following makes utterances that are not very positive towards one particular community, we can ask somebody else who has either the same or a bigger following to make statements either against what that person said or just against hate speech in general. Share something positive. If somebody is sharing something that is maybe racist or tribalist, then you get somebody else who has a lot of influence to say something positive about the same, to say something positive about every race, to rile people up to fight against whether racism or tribalism, anything in terms of hate speech. So it sort of cancels. And these high-profile people, what they do is they spark conversations. So when somebody says something, a lot of people are going to be discussing it, and a lot of people are going to be talking about it. And in that way, it won't really cancel, but you're going to counter these statements that are made by high-profile speakers. The third one, which has a disclaimer, is you can get government agencies to ensure these high-profile individuals do not use hate speech. And that point has a good side and it has a bad side. Number one, the government is actually able to crack down on hate speech. In my country, we actually have hate speech laws, and the government can use them to arrest people, basically, to bring charges against them for hate speech. We have laws against hate speech. And this can act as a deterrent for people who go in front of people, go in front of cameras, and give very, very bad statements. But also, and this is a problem with African governments, is that it can be prone to abuse. Because this speech can be against either the people, it can be against the government. So if you say something that the government does not like, if you are making statements, however true they are, or they're not even hate speech, but you're criticizing what the government is doing, then they can arrest you for hate speech. It has happened. It has happened in Kenya. It has happened in Rwanda. It happens everywhere. So these laws, they can be a good thing. They can deter people from making hate speech statements, or the government can use them in another way to sort of harass people into not saying anything, to harass people into silence. So do you have hate speech laws? Do you think the government can actually crack down on hate speech? In your opinion, do you think the government in this fight for hate speech can actually be unbiased enough to just arrest people who are propagating hate speech, or do you think this is something they can misuse? Let me get a few opinions on what do you think the government's role should be in fighting hate speech.
Nikki, can I share my opinion?
Yes, yes, I am.
Yes, I was going to share that unfortunately, in our country, it seems that a lot of our government officials are prone to tribalism, and it will become very difficult to penalize people if you first don't start with yourself. So most of the people, including various authorities, they need to think about how to screen out tribalism in the army, in the police, and even the media people need to think about how are they going to cleanse themselves from tribalism and bigotry. So if we can first look at how to start with ourselves, and then to implement maybe codes of ethics that can be in place in institutions, and then make people abide by them and penalize them for this, then this can be the way to go. But I personally see that us as a country, we were a bit better when we were fighting the war. We were more united. But right now, we are fragmenting into the tribes, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody here. This is just my piece that I'd like to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. You raise a very important issue of the media having. Do you think the media take sides when they report on issues, when they report on any issues to do with conflict or just any sort of issue that they're reporting it? Do you think they're biased based on where it is and who has done what, or how they report things, what and when they report it? Do you think that bias affects the news, how it is reported?
Okay, basically, I would like to say, back to the media again, sorry, I'd like to say that the media has done a very good job in 2013 of being very unbiased. Also, the tribes were very unbiased. They sacrificed themselves, they put themselves in the front line. And because of them, the narrative which was changed, and the whole world was able to see that this was a power struggle. So I think right now the media as a whole, they're one of the institutions that are the most ethical right now. We have a lot of institutions that are coming up, and they're really under the fire by the government at times. So it's very hard for them to promote anti-hate speech and anti-tribalism. But right now, I think they're the leading example, to be honest.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of change happening in the country because of the media's integrity right now. But they're actually under fire and they're being targeted because they're trying to tell the truth. But right now, the government is not as, they behave as if they're immune, have immunity to everything. So it's very hard to penalize the government for any statements that they make. This is just my 2 cents.
I think that's very true for a lot of African governments. I would say a lot of governments in general, but even our own government, they have this, when they're going after people, they only go after the people who are opposing them. They never go after people who make some very inflammatory statements, but they are supporting the government. And so, as Ian said, it's a bit hard for people to police themselves, and they should start with themselves. And so when the government itself is able to rid itself of tribalism, of favoritism, then it can put down the laws, and then maybe it can charge people who make this sort of statements. Any other view on the issue of government and policing hate speech? I'd be very interested to hear this from everybody's side. Anybody else's opinion? What do you think the government can do? We have heard the government should start inward, and they should first look at their own policies and sort of police themselves before they start policing others. What other thing do you think the government can do in this fight against hate speech and countering hate speech?
Yes.
Yes, John.
In my own view, I think the government should should punish those who create hate speech on others, and then they should come up with the guidelines or the rules. If you, whenever you incite hate speech, you should be punished. By that, people should not encourage hate speech, I think. Yeah.
But don't you think the government will misuse that to mean if they penalize the people who use hate speech, then they will penalize the people who are criticizing them versus criticizing anybody else?
Come again?
If the government is given the power to punish the people to penalize the people who participate in hate speech, then would they use that chance to penalize the people who are criticizing them rightly for the things that they're doing?
I think if you are criticize them in the right way, I think they won't. But if you are inciting false information against the government, that's when you can be punished. Yeah.
Yeah, I like how positive you are. And so, when we're talking about pressure to retract statements and asking other high-profile persons to take statements, there's one point I forgot, and that is you can actually put pressure on the social media platform itself. And there have been instances of social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, being put under pressure to either block someone, to remove somebody from their site, to delete the videos, to delete the posts. And they have done this. Their policies, they keep updating their policies on hate speech. They're not enough, but they at least do something, especially when they're pressured. A few years ago, there was a time, I think it was the whole English Premier League, and they were joined by other sports people in other sports disciplines, in tennis and golf. They all went on, I think, a social media blackout for a whole weekend to just compel Facebook, Instagram, all the social media platforms to do something about the high incidences of racist hate speech that goes on social media. Because when we say hate speech is directed towards groups, there are groups that suffer it more than others. And when it comes to sports, especially in Europe, in the US, people who are not white, players of color, and especially Black people receive a lot more abuse than anybody else. And so we can do that. We can get enough momentum going to compel the social media platforms to update their policies on fighting hate speech. So that's one way we can counter the high-profile speakers. So I was talking about the online targets. The first one, especially in the African setup, is tribal groups. Tribalism is one of the biggest challenges that faces Africans. And so we always divide people according to tribal groups. So as Kenyans, we've just come from a general election, and that is always very tribally charged. And when it comes to hate speech online, tribal targets it constitutes, I think, the largest percentage of hate speech. So that is one thing you need to look out for. It's tribal groups, women, and people who are different from the other mode. So this is a question that we were posing to everyone who's listening. So have you, or has someone you know been attacked online because of their ethnicity, because of their tribe? Has anyone gone through something like that or seen somebody being attacked? Have you actually seen these instances of hate speech? Anyone? I'm sure if you're online, we have seen this. There's no one of us who's been attacked, maybe because of a comment they made about being from a particular tribe. I don't know how it is there, but for us, in terms of names, so if my name is Njoki Karaoke, somebody can know exactly where I come from. So if I make a comment, somebody just starts immediately coming and say, oh, you're saying this because of your tribe, and then they attack you and your tribe together. So has somebody ever gone through something like that? Yes, I am.
It happens every day online among South Sudanese, particularly the ones in the diaspora, because
yes.
Tribalism has been there, but the current conflict amplified it. Well, the conflict amplified it even to higher proportions. So you find unscrupulous people always take it to another level and attack each other online, and so it's always there.
What do you do about it, Richard? When you see somebody being attacked online, is it something you've ever confronted? Have you ever talked to somebody who is being attacking? Have you ever done something?
For example, if it's a discussion on Facebook or a discussion going on what do you call it, Clubhouse, then you set up clear rules, you know, no personal attacks, no tribal, things like that to mitigate some of these things, or to preempt, just to stop them from happening, actually, even before they happen.
And when they happen, do you remove that person from the site? What kind of consequences do people face for such kind of attacks?
Can you say again?
Do you have any sort of consequences? You say those are preventative measures, but what if somebody actually comes through and attacks somebody because of the tribe or for any other reason? What consequences?
Then you eject them from the particular forum or discussion. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Ayen, you had your hand up.
Yes, actually, I think the problem in South Sudan is it's becoming more of an ethical issue and a cultural issue, because having all these inappropriate jokes it's becoming part of our culture. Like, for example, the way we treat people with disabilities, for example.
Yeah.
Like, we recently received a very big musician, and he's from Nigeria, and he has like an eye patch. And I was observing that there's this trend, they called it the Ruger trend, where everybody was putting things in an eye patch. So it might seem funny in one side that everybody's putting something as an eye patch, doing something different, maybe some money as an eye patch, or like some bread as an eye patch. But when you look at it properly, it's really offensive, and it's an insult to people with disabilities. And I noticed that nobody said anything about it. And that's the same with women jokes. Chauvinism is heightened in our country because of patriarchal lifestyle. And most of the sophisticated people don't even know that they're part of the chauvinism. They don't realize that they should censor themselves before talking, because if you're a media person or if you're a high government official, you need to be careful what you're saying. For example, there was a time when one of our, I think the president had said something about we cannot have governors because they'll be sexually assaulted if their governance is insecure, rather than talking about working on insecurity. And then back to tribal issues. Tribal issues seem to be part of our culture, and people are not aware of it. That's why we need to have more of these trainings and more of these conversations. Like, for example, there's a problem between people within one area called Jungale, and they're having some incitement. Then there's jokes about people who's having different tribal marks or tooth removal because of their cultures and practices. And all of these statements, they seem to be humorous to all of the tribes, but they're actually unacceptable. They're unsophisticated, they're unacceptable, and they're culturally, I think they call it politically incorrect. In other countries, you'd be fired for many of the things that you're doing. So it comes back, it goes back to institutions. Do we have a code of ethics? Do we have the will to implement things against hate speech and to make sure that people have integrity? So we have to start with ourselves. And the good thing is that institutions like NGOs and international NGOs, mostly international NGOs, have some rules. Like, for example, the UN has rules for respect for diversity, the same with international institutions, and then also with the media. But we need to work more on the government institutions and the local NGOs. We have a lot of work to do in our country for us to go ahead.
Thank you. So there's something you've touched on, and I feel like we sort of cloak a lot of this hate speech and a lot of this utterances against other groups of people, whether it be in terms of gender, in terms of disability, in terms of race, in terms of tribe. We cloak them a lot in humor. And whenever you have a problem with it and people say, oh, you do not have a sense of humor, we cannot say anything anymore because we will be called that political incorrectness. And I see a lot of people online complaining that people have taken the fun out of everything. So using humor to cloak hate speech is hate speech in whatever form, whether it comes in form of a song, whether it comes in form of a joke, whether it comes in form of an illustration, it does not matter. Hate speech is still hate speech, and it still affects the community at which it is targeted. And so people from other places will say, oh, you know, it's just a funny thing. People are just laughing. And so it becomes a bit harder to police, because even other people, maybe some people from the same community that is being targeted, also think of it as a joke, but it's still not okay. Thank you, Ian, for bringing up that issue. I would also have liked to talk about the issue of women in positions, who are in positions of power, and the abuse they face that is statistically way more than the men in power face. But I think the time is not really on our side. So we're going to save that discussion for next week. And we're going to move on to peace building through art and technology. And the question is, how can we use our art or technology to spread peace? Yeah. And when we talk about art, I think whenever I talk about this issue of art, a lot of people seem to think we're talking about either just the art that we hang on our walls, or music, or something that is done by professionals. But when we talk about art being used to spread peace, we're talking about everything that you can do that we can call an art. You know, cooking a beautiful meal, that's an art. Sewing, you can sew something that has maybe the colors of your flag, it has a beautiful peace message. That is still art. Dancing is art. You can either, for example, in terms of tribes, different tribes have different dances, they have different ways of expressing their own culture. And so you can use that as a tool for peace building. Sorry. Writing a story is an art. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm going to get a glass of water. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, I'm back. I have a cold that is really disturbing. Anyway, so talking about art, so anything you can do to showcase your skills is an art, whether it's singing, it's dancing, it's cooking, it's giving a story, it's writing or reciting a poem. As long as it has a message that can bring people together, or the very act of you performing that art, whether it's writing an article, I know we have a lot of journalists here, whether it's writing an article, it's writing a post, whatever it is that we can do to help spread this message is going to be considered peace building through art. And so, again, I will throw this to you. What's a good example? What do you think art can be used, either whether it is art, it is sports? How can you use this? Do you have examples where you have done this, or have you seen it being done? And do you think it brings results when we are peace building through art? Do you think this is something that can bring us together? In the example, in the case of South Sudan, do you think art? Yes, Mahmoud.
Yes, on the case of the art, art is a strong tools mostly being used within the country, whereby you found the majority of the youth gathered either at poetry point or at literally arts work. you found that youth come together. An example of space, we talk of Sinai Hub, where the office of Defy Hate is. You found that the majority of youth gathered there. And if you look at your world, you find different messages of artistics, which has been drawn on the pencil wall, in which it shows that it brings all the youth together, and also it educates the elders who come and witness what is happening at every corner. Secondly, we talk of music industry currently, as an example as given of Silver X with John Prong before, that the youth have understood the work of art as a point of unifying factor among the youth, and it advocates for the peaceful coexistence. And that's where people condemn Silver X over John Prong's issue. Then is through the use of the voice as the music industry, and to the poetry and others literary works, they also include hints in which it brings together youth as a point of peace building. And that's what I could say about.
Okay, thank you. I like the fact that you've brought on the issue of the youth and how art helps them. So in terms of violence, especially when it's politically instigated, you find that the people who are going to commit this violence most of the time are young men. So what is it that we can do to mitigate this? How can we reach them? What do you think? Is it in terms of arts and sports? Do you think there's something we can do to reach that particular population segment, because they're the ones that are most used by politicians and the ones that are most used by the people in power to instigate violence? So what do you think can be done to reach them? Yes, Mahmoud.
Yeah, actually on this issue of the youth, we talk of the youth engagement. When people are always engaged, they will not have that time of creating negativity about certain aspects or about certain person. You find that when you got yourself busy, you will not have that time of attacking somebody. At this point, we talk about an example of the current ongoing now. We talk of Junup Open Space. It's a youth organization currently run by youth, and they engage a community door-to-door dialogues about the peace building, and also creating a sport among the youth at different age set groups. There is a sport whereby it engages youth, bringing every youth at every neighborhood to come and play peaceful coexistence, in which you find that this there has been this stage of group by groups, in which they name themselves, we are crew with certain names. You find them that are fighting, and the very youth in which community are benefiting from them. Engaging them at the sport activities, it will give them that chance of using their own knowledge. If person is good at media, or like you are good at photographing, the broad ends or engage them you using a photographic things, in which you find that the person passions is all.
Hi, Mahmoud, we seem to have lost you. Sorry. Oh, yes, you're back.
It's quiet. I don't know why.
Oh, sorry, we seem to have lost him completely. Okay, but I would like to hear anybody else. So those activities in terms of sports and engaging the youth, have they actually had an effect on reducing the violence or on reducing the attitude of the youth towards being used as the conduits of violence for the people in power?
Yes.
Yes, John?
Yes, the art as a tool to bring peace, it has helped a lot in most cases. I will give an example in Kakuma refugee camp, that is Kenya, northern Kenya. There was a fighting between Dinka and Nuer in 2014. And then majority of people who were involved in that fighting were youth. So one guy came up with an idea of conducting a peace festival. It was in form of music and poetry. So all people gathered, they performed, and then the youth sat down, they discussed the importance of peace and the side effect of war, you see, because they were the victims. So Dave sat down with them, he discussed a lot with them, and they all resorted for peace. So I think it helped a lot.
Thank you, John. Then I hope everyone can hear when we're talking about the people who are most likely to be affected by the issues of violence or being used by the people who instigate violence. So if we can just find ways to keep them engaged, keep them busy, to spread this message of peace building to them through the means that they can listen to, whether it's through storytelling or a sports tournament or anything that can make you reach them at their level, then we are moving more. The peace building process is something we're actually doing, and we're moving more towards hate-free communities and towards violence-free communities. Thank you very much. So these are just things to do. It's from one of the posters from the field guide, and things to do in terms of peace building. So the first thing, in terms of sports, we were talking about, you can attend and cheer each other's sporting events. So this is across all divides, across gender, across tribes, or across geographical boundaries. So if you belong to this region, you can go support the other region. And so that builds peace. In Kenya, they started this. The northern part of Kenya has a lot of conflict. So this started with the communities of the Samburu, Turkana, and so they would organize this tournament that brought them together. And so going for the tournaments, cheering for each other, it had a marked difference in the kind of conflict that was seen before and after. So that is one thing to do. You can tolerate and appreciate linguistic diversity. So in terms of language, learning another person's language, or just not mocking their language, not using their language to make them feel different. And so you appreciate the fact that somebody either speaks a different language or another language, like maybe their English is affected by an accent because of the primary language they speak. And that is something very big, I find, in African communities, because your mother tongue, the tongue that you speak the most, has an effect on how you speak other languages. And so people use that as a way to create hate speech, as a way to attack other people because you sound different and you talk differently than them. So if we tolerate and we appreciate the linguistic diversity that we find as Africans, as people living in the same community, that's another thing to do for peace building. We talk about music, we talk about dancing, you show interest in their traditions. You don't listen to what they do, maybe in terms of marriage, bride price, in terms of what they do when somebody dies, their burial practices. You don't listen to that and just say, oh, these people are so backward, these people are this. Just show interest, and not just interest, but actual positive interest, and tolerate other people's tradition. And of course, listen to other people's stories and histories. So we've talked about art. And when we talk about peace building through technology, a lot of people think it's something very complicated. But even right now, we are peace building through technology. We are here having a class on Zoom, and we are talking about messages of peace and how we can build peace in our communities. And that is one way to peace build through technology. So the same technology that is being used, social media, to propagate hate speech, we can use the same technology to disseminate messages of peace, messages of togetherness, positive messages, messages of mitigating conflicts. So the same technology that is being used to put out this negative statement is the same technology we can use to put out positive statement. And one campaign that we have is called Think Before You Click. I think for this, seeing as you're being trained for fact checking, this is very important for you. I think you've been trained on this. So it's just an awareness campaign we put out to the public. And you know, when you get that first SMS, somebody sends you something on WhatsApp, the first thing you do is just share. You don't even stop to ask yourself several questions. You don't stop to think. You don't stop to find out, to research whether it is true or not. And most of the time, finding out whether it's true or not only takes like one search, one Google search for you to know if it is true or not. And so fake news is spread so much because people tend to believe everything they read. And so if you can, after this training, if you can go out and have awareness campaigns and tell people in your community and tell your colleagues and tell you know, people in your family, whenever something is shared, just seek to find out, does this person know the source? Do they know whether it's true or not? And so Think Before You Click is a campaign that we continuously run to just make people aware that everything you read might not be true, even if sometimes it's not just not true, it's an exaggeration, but it is meant as an attack on somebody else. So we stress the importance of actually thinking about and researching everything that we share on social media. We also celebrate UN days. The UN has several days to sort of create awareness about hate speech, about media literacy, about peace. And so one of the days we celebrate is called the International Day for Countering Hate Speech. And it can be a very good vehicle to either share posts by people who are celebrating this day. You know, if a very large amount of people are using the same hashtags, they're going to be, the algorithm is going to do what it does, and it's going to put it into very many people's timelines and news feeds. So you can actually just check to see, like this one is usually on the 18th of June. There's also the 21st of September where we celebrate the International Day of Peace. And for us, we usually mark it with something called the Peace Jam, and we have a huge campaign about it. So you can sort of piggyback on those days to create awareness in your own circles about countering hate speech, about peaceful messages. So you can share, maybe when we make posts, when the UN make posts, a lot of people in the peace building community mark these days. So you can just join them and mark these days and sort of make our voices amplified, make our voices bigger in fighting hate speech. So this is our campaign, our Think Before You Click campaign. First thing, be very clear and transparent. Make sure your communication is very respectful, and you think about how your posts look to others. In that way, the same point as if you reverse it, if somebody made that post about you, your community, or the group that you belong to, how would you feel? So this whole thing is just a campaign to make people think about what they post, to think about the effect that it has. You know, most of the time, people just post things. They don't think about the people who are on the receiving end, the people who they're talking about, because it's just, to them, it's just they've already dehumanized these people. So everyone to them is just a group of people. They don't look at the human beings in that group. And so Think Before You Click is a campaign. So you can fashion either your own campaigns, or you can borrow from us. When you go to the hashtag Think Before You Click, you can see all the posts that we've made on that campaign, because it's something continuous that we do. So you can go look at what we've done with the campaign. You can come up with your own campaigns to sensitize people on the issue of sharing either fake messages, misinformation, disinformation, just something that they have not verified, something they have not taken the time to think. Because maybe you see something on WhatsApp, somebody sends you something on WhatsApp, and you share it in a group. And this group has 30 people. And those 30 people, 10 of them decide to share them in other groups. And by the time you go and research and you think, oh my God, this thing was not correct. And you come and post in the same group. Maybe those same 10 people will not post in the other groups that they posted. So nobody will ever see, maybe 10% of the people who saw the initial message will see the rebuttal message, will see either the apology that you were wrong, or people will just not bother. So fake news spreads like bushfire. So we should be very forefront in the fight to make sure that people think before they click. This is the game I was talking about, the sort of snakes and ladders. So you start, and anything positive that you do, it's a game of rewards and consequences. If you do anything positive, we take you back, we take you forward. If you do something like reposting hate speech and spreading propaganda, then you go back. It's just a very simple game that you can use during the trainings. Same in Cameroon and Ethiopia. Sorry about my call. I will take questions now. Yes, Nancy. Nancy had her hand up. Where did you go, Nancy? Okay, anybody else has something to, not even a question, just a comment, something to discuss with the group? Maybe something you have learned today, just any sort of comment is welcome. Share something with the group. A question either to me or to the people in the group, or if it ties into what you have been learning in the other sessions. I welcome any comments. Okay, where I come from, they say silence means consent. It means we are on the same page.
Thank you, Kariuki.
Yes, Thor.
Thank you so much for a very precise presentation. We really enjoyed it. And my comment is that if possible, the material for this presentation can be shared, and yeah, so that we also acquaint ourselves with more information about this. Second to this is that based on the issue of countering hate speech, I have a question, and this question goes like this. In case the speaker is a big man, according to what people call them, and altered dangerous or hate speech in the public, and you call for action or for the speaker to retract, and he or she doesn't, because of the immunity. On top, you are targeted for pressuring the big person to retract, and based on the policies, the hate speech or the guidelines, the social media guidelines that we have in our countries, mostly in Africa, and particularly in South Sudan, there are no policies that are guiding no policies on hate speech, more especially, that are in place right now. What do you do in this case if they are resisting to retract, and you see the speech is very dangerous in the public?
You see, unfortunately, I will say personal safety is also always a thing when you're fighting for freedom, and when you're fighting to have high-profile people take responsibility. In our case, right now, you understand what is going on in Ethiopia. We have people who cannot comment on things, on the situation in Ethiopia. We have an online presence that is touted as, East Africa, because the people in Ethiopia cannot have their own social media pages, because if they are seen to write something that is against maybe somebody in the government, then it will present a problem because they are targeted. And, it's some place with what we can say dubious policies and laws. Then you can just be targeted and somebody comes and picks you from your house. We, as the audience who maybe have been helping you to push this, cannot help you at that point. We can raise an entire campaign on social media to free you, but then that is up to either the government or the kind of pressure they get from other governments or from the people who sort of maybe sponsor or give them aid. That is now a much bigger problem. And even when you pressure high-profile speakers to retract their statements, not all of them will retract. Not all the pressure will work. It is not a guarantee that you pressuring them will work in them retracting their statement. So I think in as much as we want to counter hate speech, our personal safety is also something that is very important. It's something that we need to look at. So if you say this person is putting out some really dangerous speech that has a call to action, but you feel like you cannot speak for fear of being targeted, you might want to maybe contact somebody else who is in a position to do so, to call them out. Right now we're in a global village, so you do not have to do it yourself. We have these groups on Facebook, and you see somebody else say, this is from an anonymous member, because they do not want to be identified, so that they receive no blowback on themselves. So you can use that option. You can have somebody either in a different place or in a different country to raise those issues. Either just maybe send the clip to somebody else who can put it up, whether audio or video, or awareness will be raised, but there will be no blowback on you. So that is, again, peace building through technology. We can use that to remain anonymous, or there are other ways you can use to remain anonymous online. I will not comment on them for now, sorry. But again, always make sure your personal safety it's not guaranteed, because even right now in Africa, a lot of journalists are on the chopping block. A lot of governments go after journalists, they arrest them, they put them in jail, it's a lot. So one, make sure your personal safety is not that much compromised. And two, you can send whatever it is that has that hate speech to somebody who's in a position of posting. Yes, Nancy.
Okay, thank you so much. At first, my network was not okay, but right now I think I can say something. Okay, like some of these misinformation and fake news, some of them are spread through offline, not online. So, like, what are some of the ways that we can be able to, like, to help those people who spread those fake news? Like, how are we supposed to tackle them? Because some of these people, they are not online. Yeah, like in their villages, some people can just go there and spread, like, this community is planning to attack you or something. Like, how are we to get in and help them? Yeah, because it is an offline kind of a thing. So I don't know. What can you say about this?
Offline. Okay, Johnson, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, really, I'm very grateful for the presentation, more special about the history. And
I can't hear you very well, Johnson.
Yes, I'm saying I'm really very grateful for the presentation of today.
Okay.
More special about the history and how it can translate into dangerous peace, then resulting into violence. And secondly, we have also learned about countering high-profile people, which is a bit different in the context of South Sudan. But at the same time, I see there need to at least create awareness about hate speech, which is very
how create awareness, yes.
Because engaging from, I mean, the leaders is not all that possible, but it's an effective that create awareness as we have learned from the slide that you have just shown. Then the question is, like some of us who are working for local and international NGOs, is it possible program?
Is it possible to? Johnson, you cut off. Is it possible to? Is it possible for what?
Are there opportunities within the head in
opportunities?
Yeah. So which we can at least advance this kind of initiative in order to get awareness to the community.
Okay. Thank you. John, you have your hand up?
Yes, I have a question. My question is about the misinformation online.
Okay.
Yes, I want to ask you, of the person who is who don't have a media literacy skills, how do you advise such person to maybe do research if you suspect a information to be false? That is thinking before you click. Huh? That is thinking before you click. You go and do research, but you go and find out there's a published website concerning those people or concerning that information. But it can be fake also. How do you do a proper research until you figure out this is a scam? Yeah.
Okay. I'll start with Nancy's question about how we can reach people offline. So what we are doing here is we are starting with the people who are online, and you are online here. And we hope it will have a multiplier effect. And we are essentially sending you out to the community. And you do not have to just concentrate on the people who are offline, because in as much as today's lesson was about social media and conflict, but we look at conflict and conflict mitigation and hate speech mitigation, both online and offline. And so we have a lot of work we do within communities. And so we have 22 participants here. And so every single person comes from a community, and we understand what is going on within our own communities. So we usually have trainings for people who will just go to the communities. We give them the field guide. So the field guide in itself is a training guide. You can go with it and train people who are on the ground, people who might not know about what is going on online, because we know in our rural areas in Africa, a lot of people there are not online. They do not have access to the internet. Even if they have a mobile phone, maybe they have one that does not have internet service. So we have, I will I think leave a link for the field guide. I don't know if you have access to it. And so it can act as a guide when you go offline, when you go to your communities. We can reach those people. And we reach them, yes, we can reach them through community meetings, community gatherings. You talk to religious leaders, they have access to large groups of people in churches, in the mosque. Community leaders, I don't know what to call them there. Here we have chiefs, we have baraza leaders, you can reach them. But also one medium that is not talked about, people seem to think it has gone out of, I don't know if I can say of fashion, but it's radio. Radio reaches a lot of people in the villages. A lot of them rely on radios as their main source of information. And so you can come up with programs that can go on the radio of you talking about issues of hate speech awareness, and you can reach a wider audience. There's there's a whole host of things you can do to reach the offline community, Nancy. So I think I will leave a link on the group for the field guide that you can go and read and go through it and sort of see the kind of things you can do to raise awareness in the community. It does not just have to be online, because in as much as a lot of things are said online, when you go look at the numbers, the number of people, the percentage of people who are online in Africa, it's less than half. So that means if we concentrate just on online, we are not servicing the larger part of the community. And we can reach even them to sort of talk to them about issues of hate speech. And, you know, when a leader comes to the community and says something about another community, you can either challenge them, you can talk to them to make sure sort of they build immunity against this hate speech and misinformation. You can bring them together. You can have programs where, like I said, be tolerant of other people's culture. You can just go ahead and spread awareness and spread the message to the community. It does not have to be online. Nancy, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did.
John, you were talking about media literacy. Nancy, you're saying something?
No, I said thank you. I got your message.
You do what?
I got what you said. Thank you.
Okay. So we're talking about media literacy and proper research. We also have a whole chapter on media literacy, because even when you tell somebody to go research, there are either news sites or websites that are also very biased. So where do you go? What's the proper website to go to get real news? So I will also, I think, link the chapter that will help you with media literacy, to know the kind of sites you have. You can never be 100% sure, of course, but you can also always research to see. You see, if somebody says, this person said this and this at such and such a time, maybe it was a video, and you go and watch the video for yourself, then you can find out if they said it or if they did not say it. But there are actually sites like there's Africa Fact Check. You can go input that. They have a whole entire site. It's just a site for fact checking. They look at maybe the stories that are making the rounds, and they go and do the research by themselves and find out, did this thing happen? Did it happen in the way that people are saying it happened? And so they either confirm or debunk what is happening. So there are several sites that we can offer. We have a whole write-up on that, John. So I'll make sure all these resources I share with you, so that when you go either for yourselves or when you go out and are talking to others, you can offer them the resources as well. On the issue, Johnson, you raised of opportunities. This is I think a different sort of discussion we can have when we usually have call-outs. Like right now we have the call-outs for the fellowship, but we also like to link up with communities to see how we can support them in spreading awareness. But should that happen, since you now in the sort of wider DeFi Hate Now communities, if such opportunities come up, you can keep up with us on our social media pages. We always post whenever we are calling up for local organizations to work with or for people to work with. We will always post it on our social media, so you will always have access to that. Okay. I think if there's nothing else, we have, I think because today we started a bit later, right now it's 5:30 my time. I had planned to finish at 5 my time, but we have extended because we had the technical problems earlier. So if there's no other thing, I think I can end it there. I will make sure to link all the resources that we've talked about in today's presentation. I hear you're given assignments. I will not give you an assignment. I'll give you an assignment to just go think about everything we've talked about, because next time before we start, we'll just do a very quick recap to see if there's anything that we have talked about today that can actually help you when you're going out to help you in the peace building process. So we'll just do a very quick recap before we start the other session, but I am not going to give out an assignment as of now. So I think that is it from me. So Bida.
Bida yuko.
Oh, hi Yuko. Ah, hi. Wow. I think somebody is speaking to me in Swahili.
Mimi najua Kiswahili, nimelelewa Kenya.
Hey John, sawa sawa basi nishakusikia.
Hapo sawa. Tunashukuru for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Say hi to people over there.
Hello.
Hi. Oh, it's actually today we are celebrating Mashujaa Day. We celebrate the people who fought for our independence from the British rule. Today we set aside the day to celebrate. Mashujaa means heroes. So we are celebrating heroes. And I would like to celebrate each and every one of you. I'm sure you're heroes in the fight against hate speech and conflict. So happy Mashujaa Day to everyone.
Happy Mashujaa Day.
Yeah, nimesikia pia kuweza kwamba kumbe unajua Kiswahili
Allah.
na naitwa Sifumalo kweli kutoka Tarifa County, Kenya. Ni kweli nimechelewa kidogo, nimekuwa katika hafla ya Mashujaa Day. Kwa hivyo presentation ilikuwa nzuri sana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy Mashujaa Day to you too.
Thank you to you.
Okay. So if there's no other thing, I think we can end it here and meet next week. Thank you, Jackson. So let's meet again next week. Again, remember the assignment I've given you is just go think about what we talked about, try and put it in the context of what you do on your day-to-day, and then we'll discuss it next time. Okay?
Bye.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.